The morning sun cast long shadows across the abandoned industrial district of New Terra Colony. Officer Sarah Chen walked her patrol route with Max, her German Shepherd partner, when the dog suddenly stopped. His ears perked up, nose twitching as he caught a scent that made his entire body tense. "What is it, boy?" Sarah asked, watching as Max began pulling toward a cluster of derelict warehouses. The area had been evacuated 3 years ago when the mining company pulled out, leaving behind a ghost town of rusted metal and broken dreams. Max's behavior was unusual. In their 5 years together, Sarah had learned to read every signal from her canine partner. This wasn't his usual alert for drugs or weapons. This was something else entirely. Something that made the hair on his neck stand up, and his whine carry a note of urgency she'd never heard before. The German Shepherd led her down a cracked asphalt road, past overturned vehicles and buildings with shattered windows. Sarah's hand instinctively moved to her sidearm as they approached the largest warehouse. The massive structure loomed against the orange sky, its corrugated walls bearing the faded logo of Terran Mining Consortium. Max stopped at the warehouse's side entrance, a heavy metal door that hung slightly ajar. The dog looked back at Sarah with intelligent brown eyes, then pawed at the door. His whining grew more insistent. "Okay, we'll check it out," Sarah said, calling for backup on her comm unit. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7. I'm at the old TMC warehouse complex. My K9 partner has detected something, requesting backup for investigation." The voice that crackled back was tinged with static. "Copy, Unit 7. Backup is 20 minutes out. Proceed with caution." Sarah pushed the door open wider, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The warehouse was vast, filled with abandoned mining equipment and crates stacked to the ceiling. Dust particles danced in the beam of her light, and the air smelled of rust and decay. Max immediately began moving deeper into the warehouse, his nose close to the ground. Sarah followed, her boots echoing in the cavernous space. They passed rows of mining drills, conveyor belts, and massive ore processors, all sitting silent like sleeping giants. Then Sarah heard it. A soft whickering sound that made her heart skip a beat. It was definitely an animal, but not one that should be in an abandoned warehouse. Max's tail began wagging as he picked up pace, leading her toward the back of the building. What they found made Sarah gasp in shock. In a makeshift stall constructed from mining equipment and tarps stood a white horse. The animal was painfully thin, its ribs visible beneath a coat that should have been pristine but was instead matted and dirty. The horse's head hung low, but its eyes tracked their movement with a spark of hope that broke Sarah's heart. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, immediately calling dispatch again. "I need animal control and a veterinarian at my location immediately. We have a severely malnourished horse." Max approached the horse carefully, his training kicking in. Despite being a police dog bred for protection work, he seemed to understand the creature's fragile state. The horse lifted its head slightly, nostrils flaring as it caught the dog's scent. Sarah examined the makeshift stall more closely. Someone had clearly been caring for the horse, albeit inadequately. There was a water trough made from a mining helmet, nearly empty. A pile of what looked like stolen hay sat in one corner, moldy and insufficient. Food wrappers and empty cans scattered around suggested whoever had been feeding the horse had limited resources. But it was what Sarah found next that made her blood run cold. Hidden behind a stack of crates was a sleeping bag, personal belongings, and a small collection of photos. The photos showed a young girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, with the same white horse. In the pictures, both girl and horse looked healthy and happy. Max had found something else. The German Shepherd was sniffing around a pile of old machinery when he began barking. Sarah rushed over to find a crude shelter made from tarps and scrap metal. Inside was more evidence of recent habitation, children's clothes, a worn teddy bear, and a journal written in a child's handwriting. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the first entry. Day 1. Mama and Papa didn't come back from the evacuation ship. Star and me are hiding. The soldiers said they would take Star to the meat factory. I won't let them hurt her. The entries continued for weeks, detailing a child's desperate attempt to care for her horse while hiding from authorities. The handwriting grew shakier with each entry, the sentences shorter. The last entry was dated only 3 days ago. Star is so hungry. I can't find more food. Maybe the nice dog will help us. Sarah's radio crackled to life. Unit 7, this is dispatch. Animal control is en route, but there's something you need to know. We just received a missing person report. 8-year-old Emma Rodriguez disappeared from the evacuation camp 3 weeks ago. She was last seen with a white horse named Star. Sarah looked at the photos again, her heart sinking. The little girl in the pictures was definitely Emma, but where was she now? Max seemed to sense her distress and began sniffing around the shelter more intently. The German Shepherd suddenly tensed and began barking at a section of the warehouse floor. Sarah joined him and realized there was a drain grate that had been partially moved. Her flashlight beam revealed fresh scratches around the edges, and she could hear something moving below. "Emma?" she called softly. "Emma, are you down there?" "My name is Officer Chen. I'm here to help you and Star." A faint whimper echoed from below, followed by a weak voice. "Please don't take Star away. She's all I have left." Sarah's training warred with her maternal instincts. She knew she should wait for backup, but the child's voice was so frightened, so desperate. Max whined and pawed at the grate, his intelligence seeming to understand that time was critical. The warehouse suddenly felt oppressive, its shadows deeper and more threatening. Sarah realized this was more than just a case of a lost child and a starving horse. This was a story of loyalty, desperation, and the lengths beings would go to protect each other. As backup sirens wailed in the distance, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She reached for the drain grate, knowing that what lay beneath would test everything she believed about duty, compassion, and what it truly meant to serve and protect. Sarah carefully lifted the heavy drain grate with Max's help, the metal scraping against concrete as it came free. Her flashlight beam penetrated the darkness below, revealing a maintenance tunnel that ran beneath the warehouse. The space was cramped but dry, and she could see small footprints in the dust leading deeper into the underground passage. "Emma, I'm coming down," Sarah called softly. "I'm bringing my dog Max with me. He's the one who led me to Star. He wants to help too." A weak voice echoed back. "The dog found us? Is he nice?" "He's very nice," Sarah assured her, lowering herself into the tunnel. Max jumped down beside her with practiced ease, his nose immediately picking up the scent trail. The tunnel was part of the old mining infrastructure, wide enough for maintenance workers, but low enough that Sarah had to crouch as they moved forward. They found Emma huddled in a wider section of the tunnel, wrapped in a dirty blanket. The 8-year-old was painfully thin, her dark hair matted and her clothes torn, but her eyes held a fierce determination that reminded Sarah of soldiers she'd known, people who refused to give up no matter how desperate their situation became. "You can't take Star," Emma said immediately, even as her body trembled with exhaustion. "They want to hurt her. They said horses are just meat now, that there's no room for pets on the colony ships." Sarah's heart broke as she knelt beside the child. "Emma, your parents have been looking for you. They're worried sick." Emma's face crumpled. "Mama and Papa are dead. I saw the ship explode when it tried to leave. The bad aliens shot it down with their space weapons. I was supposed to be on it, but I hid with Star because they said she couldn't come." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. The evacuation of New Terra Colony had been presented as a routine relocation due to resource depletion. The authorities had assured everyone it was temporary, that families would be reunited once new suitable planets were found. But Emma's words painted a very different picture. Max approached Emma slowly, his training overridden by an instinct to comfort. The little girl reached out tentatively and the German Shepherd gently licked her hand. For the first time since Sarah had found her, Emma smiled. "He does want to help," she whispered, stroking Max's fur. "Star needs medicine. She's been eating the moldy hay because it's all I could find. I know it's making her sick, but she was so hungry." Sarah's radio crackled in the tunnel. "Unit 7, backup has arrived. Animal Control and EMT are on scene. What's your status?" Sarah hesitated before responding. Something about this situation felt wrong. If the evacuation had been routine, why was a child hiding with her horse? Why were the authorities so eager to dispose of the animals? And why had no one mentioned that evacuation ships had been destroyed? "I've located the missing child," Sarah responded carefully. "She's alive but needs medical attention. The horse is in critical condition. I need more time to assess the situation." "Copy that. We'll stand by." Emma grabbed Sarah's arm with surprising strength. "You can't tell them about the tunnel. This is where the resistance meets. The grown-ups who know the truth about what's really happening." "What truth, Emma?" The little girl's eyes were far too old for her age as she spoke. "The aliens didn't just want our planet for the minerals. They want to test things on us. The evacuation ships don't go to new colonies. They go to alien labs. That's why some of the adults stayed behind to fight. Sarah felt her world shifting. If Emma was telling the truth, then everything she'd been told about the evacuation was a lie. But could she trust the word of a traumatized 8-year-old who'd been hiding in tunnels for weeks? Max suddenly lifted his head, ears alert. In the distance, Sarah could hear voices approaching the warehouse. But these weren't the voices of her backup team. These were hushed, urgent whispers speaking in a language she didn't recognize. Emma's eyes went wide with terror. The collaborators. They work with the aliens. They're looking for the resistance hideouts. Sarah made a split-second decision that would define the rest of her career. She gathered Emma in her arms and began moving deeper into the tunnel system, Max leading the way. Behind them, the voices grew louder, accompanied by the sound of heavy boots and equipment being moved. The tunnel branched in several directions, and Sarah relied on Max's instincts to guide them. The German Shepherd seemed to understand the urgency, moving quickly but quietly through the underground maze. Emma clung to Sarah, her small body shaking with fear and exhaustion. They emerged 20 minutes later through another drain opening behind a different warehouse. Sarah could see her patrol vehicle in the distance, surrounded by official-looking vehicles and personnel. But mixed among the legitimate authorities were figures in unmarked black uniforms carrying equipment she didn't recognize. "We have to get Star," Emma whispered urgently. "She's all alone and scared. Please, Officer Chen. I know you think I'm just a kid, but Star and I take care of each other. That's what families do." Sarah looked at this brave little girl who had survived on her own for weeks, protecting a horse against impossible odds. She thought about the photos she'd found, the journal entries, the evidence of a child's unwavering loyalty to her companion. And she thought about the voices in the tunnel, the black uniforms, and the growing certainty that nothing about this situation was what it seemed. Max nudged Sarah's hand and looked toward the warehouse where Star waited. The German Shepherd's intelligence seemed to grasp the complexity of the situation. He understood that sometimes doing the right thing meant breaking the rules. Sarah pulled out her personal communicator and sent a coded message to her sister, who worked with veterinary services at the spaceport. If they were going to save Star, they would need help from someone outside the official channels. "Emma," Sarah said, making a decision that felt both terrifying and absolutely right. "I'm going to help you save Star, but I need you to trust me and do exactly what I say." "Can you do that?" The little girl nodded solemnly. "Star and I have been waiting for someone like you. Someone who understands that some things are worth fighting for, even when it's dangerous." As they began planning their approach to rescue the horse, Sarah realized she was crossing a line from which there would be no return. But looking at Emma's determined face and feeling Max's steady presence beside her, she knew she couldn't live with herself if she didn't try. The warehouse in the distance buzzed with activity as the mysterious figures in black uniforms began setting up equipment. Whatever they were planning, Sarah was certain it didn't involve rescuing a starving horse or reuniting a child with her family. The real question was whether they could save Star before it was too late, and what they would discover about the true nature of the evacuation in the process. Sarah's sister, Dr. Lisa Chen, arrived within the hour, her veterinary transport vehicle disguised as a routine supply delivery. Lisa had always been the rebellious one in their family, quick to question authority and willing to bend rules for the right cause. When Sarah had sent the coded message about a special patient requiring discreet care, Lisa hadn't hesitated. "This better be worth risking my license for," Lisa whispered as she unloaded medical supplies from her truck. She was a compact woman with steady hands and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her specialty was large animal emergency medicine, making her exactly what Star needed. Emma emerged from their hiding spot behind a rusted shipping container, still clutching the worn teddy bear from her underground shelter. Max immediately positioned himself between the child and any potential threats, his protective instincts in full display. "That Star's doctor?" Emma asked, studying Lisa with the careful evaluation of someone who'd learned not to trust easily. "She's the best," Sarah assured her. "Lisa has saved hundreds of animals. She won't let anything happen to Star." Lisa knelt to Emma's eye level, her voice gentle but professional. "Can you tell me about Star's symptoms? When did she last eat? How long has she been weak?" Emma's face lit up at being treated as a capable partner, rather than just a frightened child. "She stopped eating the good grass 5 days ago. Now she only nibbles at the moldy hay because she's so hungry. Her breathing is funny. and she doesn't lift her head when I talk to her anymore. That sounds like she might have a respiratory infection from the poor quality feed, Lisa diagnosed. But we won't know for sure until I examine her. The problem is getting to her without alerting those people at the warehouse. Sarah had been watching the activity around the main warehouse through binoculars. The number of black uniformed figures had doubled, and they were setting up sophisticated scanning equipment around the building. Whatever they were looking for, it wasn't just a missing child and her horse. There's another way in, Emma said quietly. The resistance adults showed me. There's an old conveyor tunnel that connects to the horse barn from when they used to move equipment between buildings. Max's ears perked up at the mention of another route. The German Shepherd had been restless, constantly scanning their surroundings and occasionally growling at sounds only he could hear. His behavior suggested they were being watched or tracked. Lisa finished packing her portable medical kit. If we're going to do this, we need to move fast. A horse in Star's condition could go into shock at any time. Every minute we wait increases the risk. The conveyor tunnel Emma led them to was partially collapsed but still passable. It ran underground for nearly 200 meters, emerging in what had once been a sorting facility adjacent to the warehouse where Star waited. The tunnel was pitch black and filled with debris, but Emma navigated it with the confidence of someone who'd used it many times. Max led the way, his superior night vision and hearing, providing early warning of any obstacles or dangers. Sarah followed with Emma, while Lisa brought up the rear with her medical equipment. The tunnel was cramped and musty, filled with the echoes of their footsteps and the sound of Lisa's equipment rattling softly in her pack. When they finally emerged in the sorting facility, they could hear voices from the main warehouse. The black uniformed figures were speaking in that strange language Sarah had heard before, their words punctuated by the beeping of electronic equipment. They're scanning for something, Emma whispered. The resistance people said the aliens gave them devices that can find humans who are hiding. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. If Emma was right about the alien involvement, then they were dealing with something far more serious than a simple evacuation operation. The implications were staggering, but right now their focus had to be on saving Star. They moved carefully through the sorting facility, using abandoned machinery for cover. Through a window, Sarah could see into the main warehouse where Star stood in her makeshift stall. The horse was in worse condition than when she'd first seen her, her head now hanging so low it nearly touched the ground. Lisa took one look at Star and immediately began unpacking her equipment. She's in critical condition. Dehydration, malnutrition, and probable respiratory infection. I need to get fluids into her immediately, or we're going to lose her. Emma began talking to Star in a soft, soothing voice. The horse's ears twitched at the familiar sound and she managed to lift her head slightly. The connection between the child and the animal was unmistakable, a bond forged through shared hardship and mutual dependence. Max positioned himself as a lookout, his training adapted to this unusual mission. The German Shepherd seemed to understand that they were all working together now, that protecting Emma and Star was as important as protecting Sarah. Lisa worked with practiced efficiency, inserting an IV line and administering fluids and antibiotics. Star didn't resist the treatment, as if she understood that help had finally arrived. Her breathing began to improve almost immediately as the medications took effect. She's responding well, Lisa reported quietly, but she needs several days of intensive treatment. Moving her right now could be dangerous. That's when they heard the voices getting closer. The black uniformed figures were expanding their search, and their electronic equipment was leading them toward the sorting facility. Sarah realized they had minutes at most before discovery. Emma had been stroking Star's neck while Lisa worked, whispering words of encouragement. Now she looked up at Sarah with tears in her eyes. We can't leave her. She's family. Sarah understood that Emma wasn't just talking about the horse. In the 3 weeks since the evacuation, Star had become the little girl's anchor to sanity, her reason to keep fighting. They were survivors together, and separating them would destroy something precious that had kept them both alive. The sound of boots on concrete echoed through the building as the search team approached. Max's growl was barely audible, a warning that danger was imminent. Lisa packed her equipment with swift efficiency, while keeping the IV line connected to Star. There's a loading dock on the far side, Emma whispered urgently. If we can get Star there, your truck could pick us up. It was risky, but it was their only option. Lisa had brought a portable IV stand that would allow Star to move while still receiving treatment. The horse was weak but responsive, and with encouragement from Emma, she managed to stand. Sarah coordinated their escape route using hand signals, drawing on her police training to guide them through the maze of abandoned equipment. Star moved slowly but steadily, her trust in Emma overriding her physical weakness. Max ranged ahead, his keen senses providing early warning of any threats. The German Shepherd had fully embraced his role as protector of this unlikely family unit, his loyalty expanding to include both the child and the horse. As they reached the loading dock, Sarah realized they had witnessed something extraordinary. Emma's unwavering devotion to Star had created a chain reaction of compassion that had drawn them all into something larger than themselves. They weren't just rescuing a horse and a child. They were making a stand for the bonds that define humanity at its best. The real test would come when they had to decide what to do next. The evidence was mounting that the evacuation was something far more sinister than they'd been told, and helping Emma and Star might make them all targets of forces they didn't fully understand. The loading dock was exposed and dangerous, but it was their only escape route. Lisa's veterinary transport sat 30 meters away across an open courtyard, looking impossibly far given Star's weakened condition. Sarah could hear the search team growing closer, their alien technology beeping more rapidly as it homed in on their location. Emma pressed her face against Star's neck, whispering words of encouragement. "Come on, girl. Just a little further. We're going to be safe soon." Star seemed to draw strength from the child's presence. The horse lifted her head higher and took tentative steps toward the truck. Lisa monitored the IV line carefully, making sure the life-saving fluids continued to flow even as they moved. Max suddenly froze, his hackles rising. 3 figures in black uniforms appeared at the far end of the courtyard, carrying scanning devices that pulsed with an eerie blue light. They hadn't spotted the rescue group yet, but it was only a matter of time. Sarah made a decision that went against all her training. Instead of calling for backup or attempting to arrest the suspicious figures, she drew her weapon and fired a warning shot into the air. The sound echoed across the industrial complex, causing confusion among the black uniformed team. "Run!" Sarah shouted, using the momentary distraction to get Emma and Star moving toward the truck. Lisa threw open the rear doors of her vehicle, revealing a mobile veterinary clinic complete with surgical equipment and recovery stalls. She had modified it specifically for large animal emergencies, never imagining it would be used for a rescue operation like this. Getting Star into the truck required all their combined efforts. The horse was willing but weak, and every second of delay increased their risk of capture. Max barked at the approaching figures, his protective instincts overriding his police training. The German Shepherd had chosen his side, and it wasn't with the authorities. Emma climbed into the truck first, calling to Star from inside. The sound of her voice gave the horse the motivation to make the final effort. With Lisa and Sarah supporting her from behind, Star managed to step up into the mobile clinic. The black uniformed figures were running toward them now, shouting in that alien language. Their scanning devices were emitting urgent alarm sounds, and Sarah could see them, speaking into communication devices that looked nothing like standard military equipment. Lisa slammed the rear doors and jumped into the driver's seat while Sarah and Max leaped into the passenger area. The engine roared to life just as the first of their pursuers reached the truck. Through the rear window, Sarah could see them pointing their scanning devices at the vehicle and speaking rapidly into their communicators. "Where are we going?" Lisa asked as she navigated through the abandoned industrial district. Emma looked up from where she was stroking Star's neck. "The resistance base. They'll know what to do." Sarah hesitated. Following Emma's directions would mean fully committing to whatever underground movement the child was part of. But the alternative was turning Emma and Star over to authorities who might not be what they seemed. "Which way, Emma?" Sarah asked, making her choice. Emma guided them through a maze of back streets and abandoned buildings, taking routes that avoided the main roads and security checkpoints. Her knowledge of the area was impressive for an 8-year-old, suggesting she'd been part of the resistance longer than Sarah had initially realized. They finally stopped at what appeared to be an abandoned auto repair shop. Emma knocked on a side door in a specific pattern, and it opened to reveal a middle-aged man with worried eyes and calloused hands. "Emma, thank the stars you're safe," the man said, gathering her into a hug. "We've been worried sick." When you didn't come back from your supply run, Uncle Jake. These people helped save Star, Emma said, introducing Sarah, Max, and Lisa. But the bad ones were chasing us with their alien machines. Jake's expression grew serious as he looked at the three rescuers. You'd better come inside. All of you. If the consortium's hunting you, you're not safe on the streets. The auto repair shop was a front for something much larger. Behind the facade was a sophisticated underground facility, housing dozens of people who had refused evacuation. Men, women, and children of all ages worked together maintaining communication equipment, growing food in hydroponic gardens, and caring for a surprising number of animals. The animals were supposed to be destroyed during the evacuation, Jake explained as Lisa began setting up a proper treatment area for Star. The consortium said there wasn't room on the ships, but we knew the real reason. Animals can sense things humans miss. They knew something was wrong with the whole operation. Sarah watched as Emma was greeted by other children and adults who clearly cared about her. This wasn't a random group of refugees. It was an organized community that had made a conscious decision to resist. The evacuation ships, Sarah said. Emma mentioned they were destroyed. Is that true? Jake's face darkened. The first 3 ships made it out safely. Then the consortium's alien partners decided the evacuation was proceeding too slowly. The 4th ship was destroyed as an example. That's when we realized this wasn't a relocation. It was something much worse. Max had been exploring the facility with the curiosity of a trained police dog. He returned to Sarah's side with a small device in his mouth, something he'd apparently found interesting enough to retrieve. Jake looked at the device and cursed. That's a tracking beacon. They must have attached it to your truck while you were loading the horse. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. The black uniformed figures hadn't been randomly searching for Emma and Star. They had been tracking the veterinary truck, which meant they knew exactly where the resistance base was located. We have to evacuate, Jake said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making life or death decisions. They'll be here within the hour. The next 30 minutes were controlled chaos as the resistance prepared for emergency evacuation. Everyone had practiced for this scenario, and they moved with efficient desperation. Critical equipment was packed, animals were prepared for transport, and escape routes were activated. Lisa refused to move Star until the horse was stable enough for travel. She needs at least another hour of treatment or the stress could kill her, she insisted. Emma wouldn't leave Star's side, and Sarah found herself unwilling to abandon either of them. Max seemed to sense the tension, positioning himself where he could watch all the exits while staying close to his expanded pack. There's another option, Jake said reluctantly. We have an old mining tunnel that leads to a secure facility 5 kilometers away. It's rough terrain, but it would get Star away from here safely. Emma looked up from where she was holding Star's head. Star's stronger now. She wants to help. Don't you, girl? The horse's response was barely perceptible, but her ears moved toward Emma's voice. The bond between them had been forged in desperate circumstances, and it was stronger than conventional wisdom suggested possible. As the first sounds of approaching vehicles echoed in the distance, Sarah realized they were all making choices that would define not just their immediate survival, but what kind of people they were willing to be when everything they believed was challenged. The rescue had become something larger than saving one horse and one child. They were fighting for the idea that loyalty, compassion, and the bonds between beings mattered more than the cold calculations of those who saw animals and people as disposable resources. The mining tunnel was a remnant from New Terra Colony's early days, carved through solid rock by determined human miners who had refused to let the planet's harsh geology defeat them. Now it served as an escape route for humans and animals fleeing something far more sinister than geological challenges. Star walked with surprising steadiness, the veterinary treatment having restored enough of her strength to navigate the rough tunnel floor. Emma stayed close to the horse's side, one small hand resting on Star's neck as they moved through the darkness. Lisa maintained the IV drip using a portable setup that allowed them to keep moving while continuing treatment. Max ranged ahead and behind their group, his enhanced senses providing early warning of any pursuit. The German Shepherd had adapted his police training to this new reality, where the people they were protecting might be running from the very authorities he had once served. Sarah found herself questioning everything she had believed about her role as a law enforcement officer. The evidence was mounting that the official evacuation was a cover for something monstrous, and the resistance fighters weren't criminals, but ordinary people making extraordinary choices to protect their community. "How long have you known?" Sarah asked Jake as they navigated a particularly narrow section of the tunnel. "About the aliens, about what's really happening." Jake's headlamp illuminated ancient tool marks on the tunnel walls as he considered his answer. "My brother was on the 4th evacuation ship. Before it was destroyed, he managed to send one transmission. The ships weren't heading to new colonies. They were being directed to research stations where the passengers were going to be used as test subjects." The words hung in the tunnel air like a physical weight. Sarah thought about all the families she had helped prepare for evacuation, all the people who had trusted the authorities to keep them safe. The betrayal was so massive it was almost impossible to comprehend. Emma spoke up from beside Star, her young voice carrying wisdom beyond her years. "The animals knew first. Dogs wouldn't get on the ships. Horses kept trying to run away. Even the cats were hiding. But the grown-ups said they were just scared of the change. Animals have instincts we've forgotten," Lisa added, checking Star's vital signs as they walked. "They can sense deception, fear, wrong intentions. We could have learned from them if we'd been listening." The tunnel began to slope upward, and they could see faint light ahead. After nearly 2 hours of underground travel, they were approaching the secure facility Jake had mentioned. Sarah was amazed that such an extensive network existed without official knowledge, a testament to human ingenuity and determination. Max suddenly stopped, his ears perked and body tense. Behind them, very faintly, came the sound of pursuit. The alien tracking technology had apparently been able to follow their trail even through the rock tunnel. "They're coming," Sarah warned, checking her weapon. She had limited ammunition and no backup, but she was prepared to make a stand if necessary. The tunnel exit opened into a natural cave system that had been expanded and fortified by the resistance. Solar panels disguised as rock formations provided power, and camouflaged ventilation systems kept the air fresh. It was an impressive feat of engineering hidden in plain sight. Dr. Marcus Webb, the resistance leader, was waiting for them. He was a former colonial administrator who had discovered the truth about the evacuation and had chosen to fight rather than flee. His presence lent credibility to everything Emma and Jake had told them. "Officer Chen," Dr. Webb said, recognizing Sarah's uniform, "I'm sorry you've been drawn into this, but I'm grateful for what you've done for Emma and Star." "Is it true?" Sarah asked directly. "About the evacuation ships, about the alien experiments?" Dr. Webb nodded grimly. "We have documentation, recordings, evidence that would expose the entire operation. But the consortium controls all official communication channels. Anyone who tries to reveal the truth disappears." Star was led to a proper stable area where Lisa could continue her treatment. The horse was responding well to medical care, but more importantly, she was responding to the hope and safety of being surrounded by people who valued her life. Emma helped settle Star into her stall, talking to the horse in the gentle, reassuring voice that had kept them both alive during their weeks of hiding. "We're safe now, girl. No one's going to hurt you here." Max explored the facility with professional interest, his police training helping him assess the security measures. The resistance had created something remarkable, a functioning community that had chosen humanity's better nature over official directives. Sarah was examining the evidence Dr. Webb had collected when alarms began sounding throughout the facility. The pursuit team had found the tunnel exit and was preparing to assault the cave system. But instead of the black uniformed figures they expected, the security monitors showed something far worse. Alien beings accompanied the human collaborators, creatures that looked like a grotesque fusion of insect and machine. They moved with inhuman coordination and carried weapons that pulsed with the same blue energy as the scanning devices. "Everyone to the emergency shelters," Dr. Webb ordered. "Execute Evacuation Protocol 7, but Emma refused to leave Star. She's still too weak to run again. If we move her now, she might die anyway." Sarah looked at this brave child who had already lost everything except her horse and made a decision that defined everything she believed about protecting and serving. "Then we make our stand here." Lisa continued working on Star, administering additional medications that would help the horse survive the stress of whatever was coming. "She's stronger than she looks. The antibiotics are working and her vital signs are improving." Max positioned himself between the stable area and the main entrance, his police training and protective instincts combining into something larger than either alone. The German Shepherd understood that this was where they drew the line. Dr. Webb handed Sarah additional weapons and ammunition. I know this goes against everything you've been trained to believe, but sometimes good people have to make hard choices. Sarah checked her weapon and looked around at the people preparing to defend their community. Children, elderly citizens, families with pets, veterinarians, and former officials who had chosen conscience over career. They weren't soldiers, but they were something more important. They were humans refusing to abandon their humanity. The first sounds of the assault began echoing through the cave system. Energy weapons fired at reinforced barriers while inhuman voices coordinated the attack. But inside the stable, Emma continued talking softly to Star, her voice steady despite the danger. It's going to be okay, girl. We have friends now. Real friends who understand what family means. Sarah realized that Emma was right. They had become a family, bound together not by blood or law but by shared choices to protect what mattered most. Max, Star, Emma, Lisa, and even herself had formed connections that transcended species and circumstance. The battle for New Terra Colony's soul was about to begin, and it would be fought not by armies or governments, but by ordinary beings who had decided that loyalty, compassion, and love were worth defending against any force that threatened them. The assault on the cave facility was unlike anything Sarah had experienced in her law enforcement career. The alien weapons fired energy pulses that could melt through rock and metal, while their insectoid appearance made them seem like creatures from humanity's darkest nightmares. But what disturbed her most was seeing human collaborators working alongside them, people who had chosen to serve alien interests over their own species. Max proved invaluable as an early warning system, his enhanced hearing detecting movement through the cave system long before it became visible. The German Shepherd had stationed himself where he could monitor multiple approaches while remaining close enough to protect Emma and Star. Dr. Webb coordinated the defense from a command center carved into the cave wall. His background as a colonial administrator had given him experience in crisis management, but this situation tested the limits of any training. They're probing our defenses looking for weak points, he reported. But they're being cautious. They want to take prisoners, not destroy everything. Lisa continued treating Star even as the battle raged around them. The horse was responding well to treatment, her strength returning with each passing hour. More importantly, Star seemed to sense the protective intentions of everyone around her. Animals had an instinctive ability to distinguish between those who meant harm and those who offered safety. Ma had armed herself with a small emergency beacon that could transmit their evidence to sympathetic contacts off-world. If they didn't survive the assault, at least the truth about the evacuation might reach people who could act on it. For an 8-year-old, she displayed remarkable courage and understanding of the larger stakes. The children should be evacuated through the emergency tunnels, Sarah suggested, but Emma shook her head firmly. Star can't be moved yet and I won't leave her. Besides, someone needs to operate the beacon when the time comes. The grown-ups might be too busy fighting. Sarah realized that Emma had been shaped by experiences that would have broken many adults. The child had learned to make life-or-death decisions with clarity that came from having already lost everything except what she was fighting to protect. The first wave of attackers was repelled by the cave's defensive systems, but everyone knew it was only a temporary victory. The aliens were learning the layout and adjusting their tactics. Worse, their scanning technology was penetrating deeper into the cave system, mapping areas that were supposed to be hidden. Max suddenly began barking in a pattern Sarah had never heard before. The German Shepherd was facing deeper into the cave, toward areas where no attack was expected. His police training was telling him something was wrong in a direction the defenders hadn't considered. There's another way in, Dr. Webb realized, studying his maps of the cave system. The old water table tunnels. If they found those, they could bypass all our defenses. Sarah volunteered to investigate with Max, leaving Emma in Lisa's capable care. The water table tunnels were narrow and partially flooded, accessible only to small teams. If attackers were using them, it would be a limited number, but they could appear behind the main defensive lines. Max led her through twisting passages that required crawling through spaces barely large enough for human passage. The German Shepherd's smaller size and superior senses made him the perfect scout for this dangerous reconnaissance. Sarah trusted his instincts completely, knowing that his police training combined with his protective bond to their group made him uniquely capable. They found evidence of recent passage in the tunnels, disturbed water, scratches on rock walls, and the faint residue of alien technology. A small team had indeed infiltrated through the water system, but Max's keen nose told them the intruders were still ahead, moving toward the main cave complex. Sarah made a decision that went against standard police procedure. Instead of calling for backup, she decided to intercept the infiltration team herself. With Max's help, she could neutralize the threat before it compromised the entire facility's defense. The confrontation came in a chamber where multiple tunnels converged. 3 human collaborators and 1 alien being were setting up equipment that would have disabled the cave's power and communication systems. Sarah had the advantage of surprise and Max's enhanced capabilities. The battle was swift and decisive. Max attacked with the precision of his police training, disabling the human collaborators without permanent injury while avoiding the alien's energy weapon. Sarah used her marksmanship skills to destroy the alien equipment and force the retreat of the infiltration team. But the victory came with a cost. The alien being had transmitted their position before being driven off, and now the main assault force knew exactly where to concentrate their attack. Sarah and Max rushed back through the tunnels to warn the others. They arrived to find the facility preparing for evacuation. The evidence had been uploaded to Emma's emergency beacon and transmitted successfully to resistance contacts on 3 different worlds. Win or lose this battle, the truth about the evacuation would survive. Star was strong enough to travel now thanks to Lisa's expert care and the horse's own remarkable resilience. Emma helped prepare her for the journey through emergency escape routes that led to hidden landing sites where resistance aircraft waited. Dr. Webb approached Sarah with an offer that would change her life forever. "We could use someone with your skills and integrity. The resistance operates on dozens of worlds, and we need people who understand law enforcement but aren't bound by corrupt systems." Sarah looked around at the people preparing to abandon their carefully constructed sanctuary. Children helped elderly citizens pack essential belongings while veterinarians ensured that every animal had proper transport arrangements. It was humanity at its finest. People caring for each other and for the beings that depended on them. Max nudged her hand and looked toward Emma and Star. The German Shepherd had made his choice clear through his actions. His loyalty was to the pack he had chosen, not to abstract concepts of authority or duty. "What about Emma and Star?" Sarah asked. "They'll come with us," Dr. Webb assured her. "Emma has proven herself as capable as any adult, and Star has become a symbol of what we're fighting for. The bond between them represents everything the aliens want to destroy about humanity." The final evacuation began as alien forces prepared for their decisive assault. Sarah helped load Star into a specially modified transport, while Emma coordinated the departure of other families and their animals. The child had become a natural leader, her experiences giving her wisdom that others respected and trusted. Max took point for the evacuation convoy, his senses detecting threats and safe passages as they moved through terrain that challenged both humans and vehicles. The German Shepherd had evolved from a police dog into something more complex, a guardian whose loyalty transcended species, and whose judgment could be trusted in situations no training manual had ever anticipated. As they reached the hidden landing site, Sarah turned back for one last look at the cave facility that had briefly been home to an extraordinary community. The aliens would find it empty, but the evidence of what humans could accomplish when they chose compassion over compliance would remain carved into the rock walls. The real journey was just beginning. 6 months later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the resistance ship New Horizon, watching as their latest rescue operation unfolded on the planet below. What had begun with Max leading her to a starving horse had evolved into something she never could have imagined. A galaxy-wide network dedicated to preserving the bonds that made humanity special. Emma had become the Resistance's youngest operative, her unique ability to communicate with animals making her invaluable for rescue missions. At 9 years old, she possessed skills that veteran agents envied. But more importantly, she retained the compassion that had driven her to protect Star against impossible odds. Star herself had recovered completely, her white coat now gleaming with health. The horse had become more than a symbol. She was an active participant in their missions, her calm presence helping to reassure other rescued animals, and her intelligence proving useful in situations requiring stealth and patience. Max remained Sarah's partner, but his role had expanded far beyond traditional police work. The German Shepherd had learned to work with dozens of different species, his protective instincts and tactical intelligence making him the perfect coordinator for multi-species operations. Dr. Lisa Chen had established veterinary protocols that were being copied by resistance cells across the galaxy. Her expertise had saved thousands of animals that would have been destroyed by the alien-sponsored evacuations, and her research into interspecies communication had revolutionized how humans interacted with their animal companions. Operation Beacon Light is proceeding on schedule, Dr. Webb reported as he joined Sarah on the observation deck. 23 families evacuated, 47 animals rescued, and another cache of alien documentation secured. Sarah watched the transport ships rising from the planet's surface, each one carrying refugees who had refused to abandon their animals to the consortium's disposal protocols. Every successful mission proved that the bonds between species were worth fighting for, regardless of the danger involved. The Galactic Senate is finally taking notice, Dr. Webb continued. Our evidence packages have reached sympathetic representatives on 17 worlds. The consortium's story about resource shortages and necessary relocations is falling apart. Emma approached from the ship's communication center, Star walking beside her with the easy grace of a companion who had learned to navigate starship corridors. The child's eyes held the quiet confidence of someone who had found her purpose despite overwhelming circumstances. The Andromedans want to meet, Emma reported. They're offering sanctuary for rescued animals and requesting copies of our interspecies communication research. They say humans have something they call pack wisdom that other species lack. Sarah smiled at the term. Pack wisdom, the human ability to form loyal bonds across species lines, to extend family concepts beyond genetic relationships, to sacrifice for companions who couldn't reciprocate in conventional ways. It was exactly what had driven her to help Emma and Star, and what continued to motivate their resistance efforts. Max approached the group with the purposeful stride that meant he had detected something important. The German Shepherd had learned to use the ship's internal communication system, touching specific panels with his nose to alert the crew to his discoveries. "What is it, boy?" Sarah asked, following Max to the tactical display. The screens showed intelligence gathered from their latest mission, documentation proving that the alien experiments weren't just about testing human resilience, but about understanding the psychological mechanisms that created cross-species loyalty. The aliens were trying to weaponize human pack wisdom, to create artificial bonds that could be controlled and manipulated. "They're afraid of us," Emma observed with the startling clarity that had made her such an effective operative. "Not because we're strong, but because we choose who to care about. They can't understand love that isn't based on utility or hierarchy." Dr. Webb studied the alien documents with growing excitement. "This changes everything. If we can prove that the evacuations were designed to study human empathy, we can turn this into a galactic scandal. No species will tolerate being used as experimental subjects." The next phase of their resistance would be more complex than rescue operations. They would need to build coalitions, present evidence to galactic authorities, and convince other species that humanity's pack wisdom was an asset worth protecting, rather than a curiosity to be studied. Star nuzzled Emma's shoulder, and the girl responded by stroking the horse's neck. The simple gesture represented everything they were fighting for: the right to choose family, to protect the vulnerable, to value relationships over efficiency. Sarah's communication device chimed with a priority message from the planet's surface. The final transport had encountered consortium forces, and civilian evacuees were in danger. It was exactly the kind of situation where their unique abilities would be crucial. "Max, Star, Emma," Sarah called, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had learned to lead by example. "We have people who need help." Max immediately moved toward the shuttle bay, his tactical intelligence already assessing the situation from the limited information available. Star followed with Emma, the horse's calm strength providing stability in the crisis moment. As their shuttle dropped toward the planet's surface, Sarah reflected on how much their little pack had accomplished. They had started as strangers brought together by circumstance, but they had become something more powerful, a family that chose each other daily. Across species lines and despite danger, the consortium forces were discovering what happened when they threatened human pack bonds. Emma's fierce loyalty to Star had sparked a chain reaction that now spanned multiple star systems. Max's protective instincts had evolved from police training into something that transcended law enforcement. Lisa's medical expertise had become a foundation for preserving life across species boundaries. The shuttle touched down near the embattled transport, and their team deployed with the coordinated precision of a unit that had learned to trust each other completely. Max scouted ahead while Star provided cover for Emma's approach to the trapped animals. Sarah coordinated tactical responses while Lisa prepared medical support for casualties. It was dangerous work, but it was also deeply satisfying. Every successful mission proved that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or military prowess, but the ability to extend family concepts beyond conventional boundaries. As they secured the evacuation site and prepared to lift off with the rescued families, Sarah realized that Max's simple act of leading her to a starving horse had changed the course of galactic history. They had started by saving one child and one horse, but they had ended up defending the idea that love and loyalty were forces worth fighting for throughout the universe. The Resistance ship, New Horizon, waited in orbit above, ready to carry them toward their next mission. Somewhere in the galaxy, other families were waiting for rescue. Other bonds were threatened by forces that valued efficiency over empathy. Max looked up at Sarah with the intelligent eyes that had first recognized something special about Emma and Star. The German shepherd's tail wagged once, a simple gesture that said everything needed. They were pack, they were family, and they would face whatever came next together.